In this month's edition of Edutainment, we shine a light on the rapidly changing field of political communication. IE University recently played host to the Transnational Connection Symposium, organised jointly by IE and Annenberg Schools of Communication. Edutainment spoke with 4 of the symposium's international participants in an effort to understand the issues at stake.
My name is John Kelly. I do academic research at the Berkman Center for Internet and Society at Harvard. And I also am chief scientist of a startup company called Morningside Analytics. I think the challenge posed to political communication as a discipline by the internet is greater than most scholars seem to realize.
I'm Marc Smith. I am a sociologist. I lead the Connected Action Consulting Group in Silicon Valley in California in the United States. The US and the EU are dramatically different from a political perspective. The US is a much more laissez-faire, money-driven process that has abandoned all notions of civility.
My name is Adrian Monck. I'm Managing Director of Communications at the World Economic Forum, based in Geneva. I think one of the really important things that a place like IE can do is bring together practitioners with academics. If you see that in the business schools where you have CEOs, business people coming and interacting with professors and with staff and students, I think that approach is hugely beneficial. And I think in the world of political communications, we're right at the beginning of seeing that happen. I think a conference like this one is really a very first step on doing that.
My name is Shanto Iyengar. I'm a professor of political science and communication at Stanford University in Palo Alto, California. This conference is an attempt to try and bridge the theoretical and the cultural and the methodological divide between European media research and American media research. And I think it's a very important event. It's one of the first conferences that has attempted to bridge this rather vast gulf between the two traditions.
We began by asking, what is the importance of thinking about media and communication as transnational phenomena?
The internet knows no border, and so we now really must look at the formation of public opinion, the way that cultural ideas are created and spread, and we must look across national borders to see that in operation.
There isn't a Spanish blogosphere and a German blogosphere and a Chinese blogosphere. There is the blogosphere. It's really a global phenomenon because all of these different networks are connected.
We're moving towards an understanding of the world where we see problems, we see issues affecting us not just as members of local communities and national communities and regional communities, but as global communities.
As bits flow around the planet, the nation state as a unit of analysis continues to have relevance, but cannot be the boundary of our data.
You find a lot of internationally aware bloggers, what Ethan Zuckerman, a colleague of mine, calls bridge bloggers. So you'll find these folks who consciously choose to try to bridge between their own culture and other cultures.
I think the creation of a new global public and what that global public does and how it talks to itself, I think that's going to be another fascinating challenge for political communications in the years to come.
The discussion quickly turned to the impact of new social media on global politics.
Global politics is obviously a very big topic, and there are a lot of humans, the 6.5 billion of us, and politics, of course, varies dramatically from place to place. But what is the impact of the internet? I would argue that there are 2 broad poles. There is the chance for liberalization, the opening of civil society, and also for surveillance and the closure of civil society, and these seem to be contradictory effects.
There is both the what you could call the techno-utopian view, which is that new technologies allow citizens to go around traditional gatekeepers. They enable people to take action on their own and to organize themselves in ways that were not possible before, that they basically reduce the power of elites and they increase the power of the people. That is the old view, which a lot of people still have.
While we in the West have been pretty positive about examples like the Green Revolution or the opposition movement in Iran, my personal concern is that, in fact, the participation of the opposition through internet technologies left a trace, left a path that leads security forces back to political agents that they're not happy with. The result is more despotism, not less.
We'll see. I think that it actually ends up being a case of history. You know, so if politics in Iran go one way and the Green movement wins and Ahmadinejad is driven out of power, everyone will say, the internet did it, right? Thanks to Twitter, the Twitter revolution. But if they don't, if it never goes further than it did right then, and they continue to have descent into what some people would call a military dictatorship, you know, is that because the internet failed, or maybe it made the authorities listening to the internet do a better job of cracking down?
I think, you know, where we are now is we're getting towards a more realistic sense of what exactly social media can deliver. But I think too, you know, the social media conversation comes back again to the individual and the importance of the individual, into how much energy they put into having a political conversation, becoming informed about public policy, and how much time they spend sharing a video of a skateboarding duck. You know, at the end of the day, it also provides us with an idea of what we spend our time doing. And sometimes the answer that comes back is that we're not the serious, political, concerned individual we thought we were. We actually spend a lot of our time doing rather silly and trivial stuff. But that's part of, you know, being a human being. We're not allowed to be serious all the time. So I think some of the understanding of what citizens need to do, how they do it through social media, those kind of things, we're coming to a more mature and less utopian and romantic understanding. But there's a heck of a long way to go. And I personally think it's still very exciting in terms of the possibilities.
I mean, those are some of the questions that the people at this conference are raising. It's too early to really form any conclusions. We've only begun this type of research agenda. My response would be is, ask me that question 5 years from now and I'll be able to say more.
So conflicting and countervailing trends, it's a complicated space that we live in.
As the interviews drew to a close, our academic and industry insiders shared their thoughts on the state of the discipline and the challenges and opportunities it faces.
The academic community in the old days used to be dominated by large institutions. Large institutions had the budgets to pay for research studies. So in the United States, for instance, we have a national election study every 2 years. We have elections every 2 years. And so we do a survey, a very large survey of about 4,000 American voters who are interviewed. And this, of course, costs a lot of money because you have to send interviewers out all across the country. And in fact, it's so expensive that the per individual cost, the cost of interviewing one person for this survey is something like $1,200. So clearly, if you have a sample of 4,000 people, so you multiply 4,000 by 1,200, you're talking about a very large number. Now, here is where the internet has made a huge impact. Because of the web, it is now possible to administer surveys online. And there's been a huge breakthrough in web technology with respect to survey sampling. So you can now put together a representative sample online and do a survey. People can self-administer the survey in a matter of minutes at a cost that is a tiny fraction of what it used to be. And so what this means now is that a small assistant professor at a small university can afford to do survey research. And so in that sense, technology has dramatically democratized the playing field of academic research.
There's a problem I face every research project I do. Because most of my work is on non-English speaking social networks. So we have to team up with experts who speak that language or are native to that culture. We typically hire groups of people to go and read websites and tell us what's going on. We are having to generate so much data in order to understand our own analyses, which really, frankly, would be data better generated by scholars working in that country. And then once we've finished this, the study's done and it's over. I mean, I really think there ought to be a sort of set of shared resources, almost a bank for internet researchers around the world to, pool their data so that they don't have to recreate everything all the time. How many people studying, say, the Arabic blogosphere need to know that this URL is an NGO promoting women's rights and this one is a newspaper? I mean, someone could figure that out once and then everybody could know it. And those structures for sharing data are not in place yet.
There are many opportunities, many challenges. The opportunity, of course, is that media has become an end user product. Anyone may now video or audio record and potentially reach a global mass audience.
The traditional communications industry, the mass media, is obviously in an enormous transition point. The collapse of traditional advertising, the collapse of traditional newspapers and news media, these are big things. They're quite dramatic changes in the landscape. They're happening around us right now. And, do we know how the landscape's going to re-emerge in the next 5 to 10 years? The answer is no.
The challenges are that you're now producing a product that has to cross quite a number of cultural boundaries. And your product may not make the same sense that it made in your culture when it's transplanted into other cultures. So certainly the transcultural issues are very large. The opportunity, though, is too vast, and we will embrace it. And the opportunity is to, at low cost, reach millions of people who will potentially embrace your message or your call to action.
Are there going to be questions that need to be answered about how we organize ourselves in a world without a mass media? Definitely. And I think you're going to have to look at the obligations we all have as organizations to communicate, as institutions, as governments, and as individuals, and how we put that back together in the new communications landscape, I think will be fascinating.
We'll see you next time for another edition of Edutainment.